Joey, we're already started.
This is KEXU 96.1 FM LP. This is JV, and you're listening to FreeAztlan. Today we got a special guest. We have Frank Gucci. He's a Chicano rapper from San Jose. Frank, welcome to FreeAztlan. And you know, I like what I like about this music is, you know, this adds to our culture, adds to Chicano culture. Very powerful. What I like about your music is that it's independent, and you know, you're not into these big labels and all this stuff, and you're doing it, you know, from the ground up. You started it yourself, doing your thing, you know, spreading these messages, keeping the drum of resistance beating in the hearts and the minds of the Chicano nation. That's very important. So you have a very important role in what you're doing, educating the people, continuing the struggle by other means. And you know, another thing I like about what you're doing is, of course, you know, we grew up in the same area, and you know, and so it's very beautiful thing to see, you know, one of my homies, one of my brothers doing something positive, and you know, and doing it for the people. But you know, having grown up in the same area, you know, I mean, I know what I went through with the pigs, and you know, let me just ask you for a little bit of background on you. You know, what is your interaction? How has your interaction been with the pigs growing up?
Okay. So first and foremost, my dad was killed by the police.
Wow.
In Los Angeles in 1978. That's my place of birth. I came up here when I was 10 years old, and that was based on me coming out of foster homes. Based on that, my dad got killed by the cops. Outside of that, basically my whole life has been, I mean, you know, everybody, we all know how the law enforcement works when you're not white, basically, or Caucasian, or fitting their profile. Obviously they won't mess with us. So my whole thing, like I have brought up before with other people, was that I got encounters with the police to the point I got taken to jail because I talked too fast. You know, and they tell them they let the enemies do a blood test and they gotta let you back out. You know, because I don't do no drugs. On top of all that, you know, like I said, I've had two places where residents where I lived at, I paid rent, and I've had actual detectives, not regular police officers, but detectives go and tell the owners that, you know, I was a gang member and that I sell drugs and get guns to the local.
Wow.
I've never been arrested for nothing, but that was their way of getting me evicted out of these places.
Exactly.
It's way harder for me. I have to, it makes everything harder. You know, I can't even be in a home. I can't get somewhere without these people going and, you know, saying some bad stuff on it that ain't true. I don't got a record like that. I never been in trouble for anything like that for them to come and start changing like that. So when it comes to law enforcement or the pigs, the police, I've never had, I never knew an officer yet to this day that was a real police officer that was here to protect the public.
Right.
And all colors.
And they're not here to protect, they're here to repress. And another thing I should mention is when you say they went to your landlord and told him you're a gang member, you know, I remember being in prison reading different histories and how in the 1950s, you know, how the government would, actually the FBI, and what they would do to communist people is they would do the exact same thing. They would go to their landlords and tell them, hey, this person's a communist living in this house, get him evicted. They would go to their place of employment, this person's a communist, did you know they're working for you, get them fired. So, it, you know, and I wrote an article about this, how Now they're employing the same tactics that they used to do at that time, and they probably still do it in some ways. And now they're employing it on lumping people, particularly those they label as gang members. They're employing the same techniques. Going to your landlord, telling them you're a gang member, getting you evicted. Going to your employer, telling your employer this person's a gang member, getting you fired. And they do all this stuff in order to disrupt your struggle. They do it to disrupt what you're building, what you're organizing, and what you're struggling against. And they know that should they dismantle everything around you, your whole world around you, chances are, you're not going to be able to do a lot of the things you're doing if they get you evicted, if they get you fired, if they, steal your car, if they, put you in a hospital. They do all these things, they're going to disrupt you. So this is a pattern of repression that they've been doing to people who struggle against them for many, many decades here in these false U.S. borders. And so it's very interesting. Another thing that I want to comment on is what you talked about, your father being killed by the pigs. And, and that's something that's been going on, since 1846, when they inflicted war on Texas for the Chicano nation. So we've been dealing with them killing us and not going to jail, not getting a traffic ticket. They don't get nothing. They just murder and do whatever. They have a license to do whatever they want to us. They've always had since the inception of our nation, and they will continue to do so until we liberate ourselves from these parasites, these oppressors. So, besides being criminalized, I was criminalized, age of 12, you were criminalized, but you suffered a different kind of oppression, locked into the foster care system. And, your parents were in prison. My parents were both in prison as well as my siblings and my uncles and my cousins and my friends and my neighbors and everybody else. So I identify strongly with you on that. But I think that your oppression went further by being locked as a young child in the foster care system, because we know that it's a very predatory system. There may be some here and there good foster parents, but for the most part, people being locked in the foster care are preyed upon. And we see all these migrant children who are now locked in the foster care system, so they will be going through what you went through, and it's a horrible thing. But I want to commend you on your character from growing up being criminalized and being forced into foster care, and what happened to your parents and your father murdered by the pigs. And you not only continue to exist, but you continue to thrive. And you've done this with your music. You've not gone to alcohol, gone to drugs. You've been able to avoid and focus, and you understand who your oppressor is. And now you're doing music. And so what was the latest song that what's the title of the latest song you came out with, so some of our listeners can maybe check it out? What was the latest song that you came out with?
Okay, well, the last song I came out with is a track called No Walking Out.
Oh.
And then right before that, I did a track called Sanho, and I did that. I did both tracks. But really, like I said, I did both tracks, and both of them have a lot to do with the way I was growing up, the way our surroundings are, and the people that put in our surroundings as far as the police. These tracks they are proof of the way we move around in our communities. You know what I'm saying? And really how we're forced to move around, not really how we want to move around.
Absolutely.
I mean, I got the 20 FI cards around field identification cards from the police.
Right.
Every single one of those was about no more than a block away from my home.
Right.
So really, I couldn't even leave my house without being put on the floor and knees in the back and hog-tied and spit on and and treated like a motherfucking animal.
Well, our neighborhoods are prisons, and everybody within these false U.S. borders are prisoners as well. And and what I like is, what I like not only from you but from other rappers is, or singers, or anybody else in the music industry, the independent music scene, is that you guys are basically street reporters. You're it's not that some people will say, well, I don't like what he says, or I don't like what she says. It's not about what you like. It's about reality. So this is the realities. People don't like it. This is you're reporting on what is occurring in the streets. And and like you said, it's not how we want to move, it's how we're forced to move. We're forced to move from our environment, from the environment that we're growing up in. We're forced to move a certain way, and that movement is to survive. That's the ultimate goal and objective, is to survive. We're trying to survive, and we're dealing with it any way we can, the best way we can. It may not be right, but that's the way we're doing it now, and that's how it's going to continue to be until a better alternative comes into play. So, but when you do your music, I'm sure you understand that music touches a lot of people. It influences them. It educates them. And and I'm glad that the Chicano Nation has music, musical talent like yourself and others who are continuing to display our own unique, distinct flavor of music, because each nation has their own flavor. It has their own, this is their own cultures embedded in their music, and we are no different. And it's very important this continues. I would like to see more revolutionary music coming from people who come from the streets, lumpen people, Chicano lumpen like yourself, who derive from the barrios, from the juvenile halls, from the foster homes, who grow up in these environments where even our parents are criminalized, our grandparents are criminalized, and this is a way of life. Repression is a way of life for us. It's very important that we continue to translate, because you're a translator. You're translating for those within our community, but even those outside our community. You're translating on what's occurring, how we're developing, how we're moving. So that's a very beautiful thing. And I just want to ask real quick, do you have any other projects or goals you're working on for the future? You don't have to go into detail, and I know you have stuff that you're working on, but maybe you can just give the listeners a brief example, a little teaser on what kind of projects are you shooting for right now?
Okay, I got like 3 or 4 projects. As far as the music part, I got like 3 or 4 albums coming out. I'm trying to do about another 6 more videos for the end of the year. But besides that, I got a clothing line I'm coming out with. I just want to go talk to some people in Los Angeles about all that. I got a couple of small businesses based on. I got a dump business I just started. So basically, I do got a couple of small projects, but nothing to where I think the clothing line is really going to be big. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Outside of that, I do in the future have ideas and plans to start my own nonprofit. And like I said, that the nonprofit I'm going to start is not going to be based on any kind of religion. It ain't going to be based on not only just trying to help our people, these youngsters that are following they know how to follow, and that's trying to survive. You want to survive where we're from, because where we're from, we don't got nothing. I come from nothing. I come from like a lot of us. We come from a big ass piece of chicken, out in the cheese and food stamps and the old school food stamps, the purple, the $20 purple, the $5, the blue can.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you'll be at home right here with Poor Magazine, because we all grew up like that. So you'll be right at home over here. But
so my point thing, and I know that we got we'll move real fast, but I'm saying my whole point is, like I said, for the future, my organization is I want to start my nonprofit for the people. Is I want to get these kids educated. Not in education, not only in revolution, but education in starting your own business, being your own small business owner. You know what I'm saying? Don't stop working for the fucking white man. Excuse me. Stop working for the white man and start your own business. I want to teach people how to start their own small business. I want to teach them how to get into real estate. I want to teach them how to express themselves on music rather than express themselves on the streets and ending up in jails or in places that we are familiar with that are not healthy, nor it's a waste of our time, you know. And life is based on only time, so we only got so much time to be able to do what we need to do to make an impact or an impression or make change, you know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to do. So like I said, my whole thing was right now what I'm doing for music, for my clothing line, these are things to establish myself in the communities and with my people. Once I can do that, and I can start my nonprofit.
If you can help financially, that's beautiful. You know, for the Chicano nation, our ultimate goal is revolution, liberation, and to detach ourselves from America because, you know, we're organizing in order to free ourselves, and we want self-determination. We don't just want a museum. We don't just want to, get a museum or, a park named after the raza. We want complete independence. We want a standing army and our own government. We want power. But, in the process of doing that, we do need to rebuild our communities, and we do need to financially help our youth. And I think that your goals, I think you're going to help the community that you come from very well. You continue to help. You continue to be an inspiration in the community that we come from. You continue to be a leader. A leader for all people throughout Northern California. You're an inspiration because you come from poverty and you've you stood up and you continue to struggle. You know who your enemy is. You've been repressed by the pig. Your family, your father was taken by the pig. So you identify and you want to continue to serve the people. And I thank you for that. And and we welcome you here on FreeAztlan anytime. And before we go, is there any way if somebody wants to any website or email or anything you want to throw out there in case somebody wants to check you out and see what you're up to?
You can go to I got a YouTube channel. It's under KEXU-FreeAztlan. I got music on there. They can also find me on Instagram IG under KEXU-FreeAztlan. I also got a Facebook under KEXU-FreeAztlan. Yeah, that's about it right now. But I am about to put up a site for the clothing line, so that'll be available too in a little minute. But that'll be in my bio on any of my media profile platforms.
Cool. Okay, Gangster Gucci, man, I thank you once again, brother, for coming on here and sharing, showing what Chicano culture and what we're doing in our community and being an inspiration. And for the homies and for the homies throughout California, throughout Aztlan, and I can't wait to have you back on the show. Much love, brother.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it, and I likewise all the way around.
And this is KE Radio. This is JV, and this was FreeAztlan.